Good evening again. We are back to the study of the Spirits book. We are studying the law of progress. And last week we started to talk about civilization. We stopped on question 792. So today we start on 793. Okay. Philip, can you read for us?
Certainly. What are the signs of a fully developed civilization? You recognize it by its moral development. You think you are advanced because you have made great discoveries and brilliant inventions, and because you are better sheltered and clothed than savages. However, you will only truly have the right to call yourselves civilized when you have eradicated vices from your society and when you live as brothers and sisters, practicing Christian charity. Until then, you are merely enlightened nations that have only passed through the first phase of civilization. Civilization has its degrees, like everything else. A civilization in transition is an incomplete civilization. It produces distinct evils unknown in the primitive state. Still, it constitutes a natural and necessary progress that remedies the problems it causes. As civilization is perfected, it ends some of the problems it causes, and these troubles vanish completely with moral progress. The most advanced nation from any two that have reached the top of the social ladder is the one with the least amount of selfishness, greed, and pride. The one whose habits are morally better, more intelligent than material, and where intelligence can develop freely. It is the one with the greatest amount of kindness, good faith, compassion, and generosity. It is where prejudices of class and birth are not rooted because they are compatible with true love for one's neighbor. Its laws do not allow privileges and are the same for every member of its society. It is the one where justice is administered with the least amount of bias, and the weak always finds support amongst the strong. It is where human life, beliefs, opinions are respected, and where there is the smallest number of poor and unhappy individuals. Finally, it is a nation where people who are willing to work are guaranteed the essentials for survival.
Thanks, Philip. So when we are talking about civilization, right, we talked about it last week. The concept of the evolution of the law of progress. Nations also evolve, and you have nations that are more developed both morally and intellectually than others, right? As we move into a world of regeneration from a world of trials and expiations that we live now, we need the moral side to develop, right? So what the spirits are telling us here is that a fully developed civilization is recognized by the moral development, because the intellectual development is important, but by itself, it doesn't generate moral progress, right? We see nations that are more intellectually developed, but still not morally evolved as much. And there is a lot of injustice, a lot of problems in their laws and customs, right? So we mentioned last week, right, that we have some nations that we can already see signs on Earth of more developed civilization. For instance, the Sweden, Denmark, New Zealand. These are all nations where the equality is more. They have more equality than other developed nations. And you see nations that are getting there, right? You see the developed nations, a lot of them are also developing their laws, becoming more morally advanced. And of course, you have nations that are much less morally developed. The development of the intellectual aspect of humanity very easily spread throughout the world, right? Of course, not everybody has access to it because of poverty and things like that, but it's available. The moral evolution, you can see the differences amongst the nations, right? By the laws that they have, the human laws. And we are going to study human laws in the next chapter here, in the next item that we're going to study. The comments by Kardec here, which is the second part, he talks about civilization has its degrees. We are all in transition, right? The more we evolve and produce less injustice, and how we reduce injustice, you do by a combination of laws, human laws, right? Because we need to control we need to control the population, because without laws we still are two imperfect spirits, and we end up deviating ourselves from the correct path. And by the moral evolution, right? So the laws, the human laws, become more and more just, right? You achieve justice through the progress of human laws. We are going to, of course, as we evolve, and we discussed this last week, because the Kardec asked the spirits if the more civilization develops, some people say that civilization is the cause of all evil of society, and actually the spirits tells us that no, it's us taking advantage, as humans taking advantage of the evolution and creating new ways of practicing evil. But we just have to look at history to see that humankind has abused its rights throughout history, right? Has persecuted and caused destruction. Now, the difference is how you regulate, how you put them into laws, and as you evolve, and the more advanced nations, you see that as you evolve, these human laws will tend to no longer be necessary, because the perfect divine laws are the ones that are going to be ruling society, right? We are not there. We need human laws, because we need to, you need to impose traffic laws so people don't start crashing on each other, right? So these are human laws, but they are imperfect like we are. So they will be changed as we move along. This was the last question on this item of civilization. So if you have any questions related to this or to what we studied last week, Elmo, anything to add there?
I think it's amazing.
You have to speak loud, Danny, so people can hear you.
For the mic, I'll try to scream. I can't speak lower than Elmo. No, I think it's very easy to read this answer within today's context, and kind of so obvious, but it's amazing within the historical context, the fact that this got written centuries ago, right? I mean, there was no nation in the world at that time that was even close to what's being described. I mean, there was slavery, there were wars, there were, there was the monarchies, people didn't have rights, right? Only the aristocracy had rights. I mean, the answer is so far from the reality at that time when this got written, that it's important not to miss the historical context of how forward-looking this particular answer is. Because today you look at the answer, it's obvious, right? But at that time it was incredibly forward-looking.
1857, right? If you think about, there was, according to, some sectors of the church, women didn't have a soul in 1857 yet, right? So, you had slavery, you had, and it was already a lot of progress from the Middle Ages and the Roman Empire. So you see the law of progress. But as I always say here, for us to understand the law of progress, you have to have a bird's eye view. You have to look from the historical context. You cannot look 5 years ago, oh, we haven't progressed in these 5 years. We went backwards because of all these things that are happening. No, it's the progress. The progress comes with resistance, always, right? You are never going to progress without resistance, because we humans, we are comfortable in our ways or afraid of changes. So for those that have some power, this fear of change transforms in opposition to progress, right? The example that I always use here, right? We know the name of those that were responsible for the freedom of the slaves, Abraham Lincoln and all the others, right? Sojourner, forgot his last name. Now name one person that was against at that time of the freedom of slaves. It was a very disputed, half and half. Half the Congress was against and half of the Congress was in favor. We had a civil war to get rid of slavery, right? And we know a little, one or two generals of the South, right? But we don't know any name that was a big opposition to abolish slavery, because those that oppose progress are left in the dust of history. You remember those that are responsible for the advances, right? So whenever we see this, what's happening, and a lot of people talk about what's happening nowadays, that there is a lot of injustices and opposition to progress and things like that, the law is of progress, with bumps, with difficulties, with 2 steps forward, 1 step backward, and sometimes 2 steps backward, but we're moving forward. And you see, like Danny was saying, this was written by Kardec and by the spirits 160 years ago. And at that time, talking about we are all equal, we are all the same, we are all children of God. And nowadays we're reading it, like Danny said, it looks to us that makes sense, but a lot of people still cannot practice it, right? There's still a lot of injustices against minorities, sex, gender, and all these sort of things, right? Countries still in war, invading others. So we still need to read this another 160 years to see if we can learn more. Okay.
I think even the concept of intelligence, right? Because since this was written, today we talk about EQ and AQ, like emotional intelligence, adaptability, intelligence. All those things are considered back then. I think just that progress that we had in the sense we recognizing other forms of thinking of like, intelligence is not only IQ, right? But then that's probably what we thought about, right? So even that in itself, I think it's a huge side of a progress that we need to look at. Yeah,
the more and more we understand about ourselves as an eternal spirit, and with all the what encompasses our intellectual understanding and progress, and then the emotional intelligence, all this different intelligence, right? And now we're dealing with artificial intelligence, which is becoming very popular in the last few months, and it's something else that we will need to learn to adapt, because it's a fact, right? It's part of our lives. Yesterday I was doing some tests on this artificial intelligence, And it's amazing, right? I read they asked 2 fourth graders to write about a theme, and then they asked the artificial intelligence to write the same text. And you read the 3, and it's really hard to find out which one is the artificial intelligence. It's incredible. But again, with this comes a lot of problems, of course, that we will have to deal with. But yes, you can see that the law is of progress. We are evolving. Okay. Okay, so progress of societal legislation. Philip.
794. Can societies be sufficiently governed only by natural law without human-made laws? If the laws of nature were properly understood and people were willing to practice them, they would be sufficient. But society has its demands and requires special laws. Yeah.
Again, we briefly touched this, right? We need human laws. The natural law is perfect. It's God's law. And our human law moves towards the natural law. But we can, it's just a matter of anything, any catastrophe that happens throughout the world, that we see the chaos that happens when people no longer have to laws to follow, or gets desperate because of things that happen around them. You have all sorts of problems and issues, and if you're following the news on the earthquake that happened in Turkey and Syria, you see how the lack of human laws controlling the environment is allowing for so much pain and suffering, more than what already happened there, right? So that's why we still need human laws, but ideally our human laws are going to get closer and closer to the natural laws. People talk about, we can talk about one of the laws that Spiritism talks about. It's, for instance, the marriage, right? Marriage is a law that, for you to get married, you have to go to the judge, you have to sign, and it's all governed by human laws. But these are human laws. So the marriage law evolves until one day, centuries or millennia ahead, we will no longer need this type of law, because we will be united as eternal spirits with all the needs, and society will respect that union without needing laws. But that's the future. Nowadays, we still need laws because we need to regulate our personal issues, right? Our interaction, right? And I always talk about traffic laws, right? You just imagine a place without traffic laws, the chaos that is people crossing the street without respecting. They do it already in New York, right? But some other places, they don't. Like Raquel was mentioned last week, right? But we still need those laws, right? But they are changed, they evolve, okay? Questions? Okay, next.
795. What causes the instability of human laws? During barbaric times, laws were made by the strongest, who established them to their own advantage. Therefore, as human beings have acquired a clearer understanding of justice, these laws have had to be modified. Human laws will become more stable as they approach true justice, meaning as they represent everyone and are in harmony with natural law. Civilization has created new needs for human beings, and these needs are relative to their social standing. People in civilized societies regulate the rights and duties of their standing through human laws. They have often created imaginary rights and duties that are condemned by the natural law, and that every nation removes from its code as it progresses because people are influenced by their passions. Natural law is absolute and the same for all. Human law is variable and progressive. At the inception of human societies, it only could establish the rights of the strongest.
Yeah, as we evolve as humanity, right? Our human laws change, right? At the time of Kardec, you didn't have traffic laws because you don't have cars, right? You had carriages and you had some laws for the carriages, but what was the main issue in New York in the turn of the 19th to the 20th century? One of the biggest problems that New York City has, how to deal with the manure produced by the horses. You know, the amount that was produced by the horses on a regular day, it was very expensive to deal with it. And they were struggling to predict what was going to happen in the future and how they were going to deal with it as the population continued to grow and the number of horses in the streets and carriages and everything continued to grow. They didn't know how to deal with it. And then 20 years later, cars dominated the streets and you no longer had the problem. The problem disappeared by itself, right? So, you know, it's just, I thought it was, when I read about it today, well, I thought it was an interesting example how we need human laws according to our present needs. The laws we have today that we think are very important for us according to our necessities, we may not need them in 50 years when things change, right? The concerns that society have today are different from the concerns we had 100 years ago and the concerns we are going to have 100 years from now. So that's the instability of human laws. The laws have to be modified according to our needs and according to their necessities. The more we evolve, the more these laws will become perfect, right? At the Roman Empire times, you know, you could sacrifice people in the circus for everybody to see. It was not against the law. It was the right for you to kill the dominated people that you were conquered, or people that had opposing views to the government. But there were laws. There were laws allowing it, right? Human laws. So now as we evolve, for us, it looks barbaric, right? 2,000 years later, it looks barbaric. 2,000 years from now, what we do today, it's going to look barbaric for ourselves when we come back in the future, in 1,000 years, 2,000 years, and we look back, because it's the path of evolution, right? The laws change according to our needs. Okay.
$796. Is the severity of criminal laws necessary for society as it stands today? A depraved society requires more severe laws, but your laws, unfortunately, are designed to punish wrongdoing after the fact, rather than eliminating the source of bad behavior. Only education can reform humankind, and then you will no longer require such harsh laws.
You know, this is, again, 1857, the spirits are telling us here that only education can reform humankind, right? And 160 years later, we still haven't learned. We are still producing laws that punish wrongdoing after the fact, instead of trying to prevent the fact from happening. Again, we have evolved. We are doing better than we were doing at that time. But you see, for instance, prisons that are supposed to be for the recovering of the criminals, Most of our prisons only aggravates the problem, right? Only causes more problems for the inmates. So we need to evolve. We need to change the laws, and we need to be more humane with our laws. And the spirits are telling us here, only education can reform humankind, right? And we mentioned last week, right, the example of South Korea, right, that became in 50, 60 years, a very undeveloped country became a developed country because it was the country that invested most in education per capita in the world for the last 50 years. You change a nation, invest in education, but unfortunately, we don't follow the example, right? We, the rest of the world. If you see how much teachers are paid in this country, which is a developed country, right? That should invest in education more than in other things, right? A teacher makes much less than sometimes than a manager at a Starbucks. Something is wrong there, right? I'm nothing against the manager at Starbucks. They should make what they deserve, but we have to take better care of teachers, right? We have to take better care of education. And you see the problem of
some of the problem here is access to higher education. It's so expensive, and
yeah, it's a general problem. Yes. Yeah, so you go from the beginning to the end, right? The cost of education here in colleges is completely,
it's absurd.
yeah.
It's inconceivable. I mean, the most like.
But again,
on earth, like you have this kind of show, and you go here like in Canada, and it's really.
But this is part of the problem of the general problem of the education in this country, right? Yeah. But how do you fix this? You have to fix from the start, right? You have to fix from the roots, which is the teachers in elementary grades, until you don't start fixing from the bottom up, you're not going to get to the solution. It's not easy. It's a big problem, but it's been done in other places in the world, right? So it is possible. But again, there are places that are worse than here also, right? So there are places that you have no access to education.
Whatsoever.
Yeah. So the Spirits tells us here, they told us 160 years ago, only education can reform humankind, but it's our laws that govern education. So we need to change the laws, right? We need to make them better here and everywhere, right? So.
John, I have a question.
Sure, Zoraida.
Yeah. What do you say with what's going on in the world today? When we refer to guns, it seems like we're living 100 years, 200 years back.
I think guns is a very specific problem of this country, right? Because if you look at I saw a graphic the other day of developed countries and number of guns per capita, and the United States is completely off charts, all the civilized, the developed countries, the guns average per person it's very small. So again, it's a big problem that this country has that has to be fixed when we have the political willingness to fix it. I thought when you had the Sandy Hook massacre 10 years ago, I thought that was going to be the turning point, and it wasn't. We continue to have the same problem. Is it a sign of of anything, it's a sign of still part of this country that is it's not morally evolved enough to understand the problem, to accept the problem, and to deal with the problem, right? Or it's a confusion of priorities. It's a very difficult subject to discuss because it always goes back to the amendment, right? The Second Amendment or Third Amendment that guarantees the right to bear arms. But you go back, for those that defend, they go back to that. For those that are against, say that we have moved past that. But like everything, it's going to change. It may last another 10, 20, 50 years. I don't know, but it's going to change because it's something that is not working, clearly is not working, and it needs to be fixed. Now we are going to have have someone, a group of politicians that think on the greater good and decide to make the changes. But until we get there, unfortunately, we have to live with it.
Okay.
I think it's but I don't think it's a global problem. It's a problem of this country.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
I don't know, Elmo, if you have something to add.
Yeah, I think the education here has to go beyond the structures that the school can provide. But education of moral values, the education that Kardec puts in the book, I was looking for, you can find that, of the transformation of the character of the individual. That's the education the skills are talking about here. They should come from home. Parents should be able to provide. But one cannot give what one does not have. So the parents does not have that education to provide, that's coming from the school. So teachers need to be prepared to provide students this kind of transformation of the education for to transform characters. Then, regardless what the laws are in terms of abortion, in terms of injustice, social injustice, discriminations, or gun control, no one will have guns because they'll have the proper education. Once you reach that level of educating individuals, moral values, civil duties properly, then those laws that deals with gun control, that deals with abortion, that deals with discriminations, they'll be meaningless because the people will act properly, people will act morally. The law is still there, but people will act in a just way.
Okay.
No, just in terms of the severity of criminal laws, I think this is more related to the US, a highly developed country, but is mind-boggling because the correctional system here is privatized, right?
Yeah.
Which incentive, like you keep people in jail for longer. It's just a very huge paradox that a country that's like ahead of its time. Many reasons we should believe that it's not, but it's pretty mind-boggling. Like you actually privatize something that should absolutely have nothing to do with earning any profit whatsoever, right?
Yeah, it's the criminal system here, right? The privatization of the jails. They tried to solve a problem and created another problem, right? Because when it's in the hands of the government, you have a lot of problems also, right? And you see everywhere else in the world where it's in the hands of the government, right? So they tried with the privatization, but with the privatization, yes, they created the problem that the owners have the incentive of keeping more criminals in jail because they get paid per prisoner, right? Again, we go from one extreme to the other. We need to find balance, and that's always what Spiritism teaches us. We need to find the middle ground, right? So privatization doesn't solve, belongs totally in the hands of the government doesn't solve. What's the middle ground there? If we had the answer, it would be solved, right? But we need to find a middle ground, and I agree with you. It's also a problem, right? Again, on the developed countries, the United States has the largest number of prisoners per capita than any other country, developed country. So it's a problem, right? Okay.
Not 797. How can human beings be led to reform their laws? This occurs naturally, based on the circumstances and through the influence of more advanced individuals who drive the world forward on the path of progress. It has already changed significantly and will continue to do so. Just wait and see.
So this question answers what Zoraida just asked, what Rogério just asked, right? The Spirit tells us it occurs naturally based on the circumstances and through the influence of more advanced individuals who drive the world forward on the path of progress. I mentioned this here several times. Divaldo said that we only need 500 more evolved spirits to incarnate at the same time on Earth and be placed in a position of making changes for the whole world to change. And we are starting to go towards that number, being the reincarnating spirits already starting to come to Earth. So, you know, if we accept that the laws of progress is a natural law, we know that these things will change. Maybe we won't see in our lifetimes this incarnation, but they will change and we'll see it because we'll continue on the other side, right? The Spirit tells us here, it has already changed significantly and will continue to do so. We just have to, you know, to look at the time that was written, right? We had slavery, women have no right, couldn't even vote. And nowadays, at least it's in the law that you cannot discriminate, right? Of course, we still discriminate because we are imperfect spirits, but you know, it's progress. Even
No, I didn't have to.
Danny, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My camera is not working. I don't know why.
No problem.
So I'm in the field of education, right? And in the United States, at least, there is this conversation among teachers that education in schools, elementary, middle, and high school levels, there is the need for change on how to educate because of the pandemic for 2 years. In certain states, the students were out of the school, right? They were home. And all the problems that the pandemic caused in the families, being out of school and etc., is bringing teachers to think about reform education because focusing on the academics is not enough anymore. So the social emotional need is greater now. So, you know, in the last question, it said, you know, the circumstances. So the circumstances now are asking the education system to reform because focusing on the academics and sending the kids to college, prepared to take tests and learn more academics is not enough. It's not working because teachers are being bullied, are being attacked. They are having a hard time. So people don't want to become teachers anymore. So it has, the change is already going on at least in the United States, for sure, I know, probably other countries in different ways as well, because this was a global issue, right? Everybody was going through the pandemic. So That was my say.
Thanks, Lenny. I know you are a teacher, so you're part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Necessity will make things change. We actually studied this a couple of weeks ago, right? That on the march of progress, the law of progress, when we don't make the changes, then we are forced to make the changes. So there are things that happen to humankind, like natural catastrophes or pandemic diseases, that makes us reevaluate and change. It's not punishment, it's just the law of progress. We need to move forward, and sometimes we need to be pushed to move forward. And what you are saying, you know, the change is going to come. But what we need to understand and remember also, which is something that we studied last week, right? When you are improving your home and you're doing refurbish of your home, it's chaos during the refurbishment, right? So for the progress to happen, you go through a period that looks like chaos, and then you get on the other side with a better, in that case, a home, right? Or in a better situation. But when you are going through it, it can cause a lot of pain and a lot of distress. But it is the natural process of evolution, that we have to go through these difficult phases for us to progress. Okay.
Can we add something?
Sure.
Because I was thinking about, like, we were talking about education, and for me, education is not only about the role of a teacher, but for me, I was thinking that everyone in the world has the power to teach others. So education is not about learning math, physics, chemistry,
Formal education.
but it's like sharing good things and good practices. So you don't need to have a master degree to be able to teach other people. And I was actually looking at the etymology of the word education, and education means the action of create, nurture, culture. And so education is not about knowing math,
Yeah.
but it's more about nurturing and like teaching people about good things.
Yeah, in the global sense, you are saying that we need to think about education in global sense that starts on each one of us and our ability to share with others what we know. That's education. Yeah, you are absolutely right. We talk about
sharing people what is good, what is not good, what is evil, what is kind of like what it, like I don't know, like for me it's much more simple, that having is not about a master, but it's kind of teaching people the value of things, of doing the good and kind of.
Yes, but like I almost said here earlier, right? You can only teach what you know, right?
Exactly.
So people have to have those morals, those values, and not everyone has it, right? Or have different ones, or have ones or you don't have others. So this is why we live in society, and this is why it's a job for everyone of society. Yes, I agree with you.
And teaching is much easier. It's actually acting and not exactly telling. So you don't need to be in a position of being the teacher, like it's pretty much acting.
Act by example.
Exactly.
Yeah, teach by example. Yes, that's the best way to teach, is by example, like St. Francis of Assisi told us, right? Go and preach, and if necessary, use words. Meaning, you know, be the example that can teach more than others. When we talk about our own kids, right? They learn much more by our examples than by what we tell them, because what you tell them, sometimes they enter from one side, lives on the other side, and don't pay attention. But when they look at our example, is what stays with them, right? So, yeah, you're right. We have to think in education as in the global sense. But again, the educational system of a place is something that needs to be worked and improved also, right? Okay. Right? Anyone else? Okay, so now we talk about Spiritism a little bit.
Influence of Spiritism on progress. Will Spiritism become a widespread belief, or will it continue to be only accepted by the minority? It will definitely become a widespread belief and will mark a new era in the history of humankind because it belongs to nature, and the time has come for it to be recognized and accepted by human knowledge. It will have to withstand fierce criticism prompted by selfish interest rather than by conviction, because there are individuals whose interests lie in tearing down this belief, some out of pride, others for material motives. Its opponents, however, will be forced to join the general consensus or otherwise risk undermining their own efforts. Ideas are only transformed over the course of time, never suddenly. Flawed ideas are weakened over successive generations and end up disappearing little by little along with those who profess them. They are replaced by other individuals with new ideas, as is the case in regard to political ideas and principles. Look at paganism. No one today professes the religious ideas of pagan times, yet they left traces that could only be erased by the complete rebirth of the human beings who supported these beliefs for several centuries after the dawn of Christianity. The same will happen with Spiritism. It has been making considerable progress, but healthy skepticism will persist for 2 or 3 generations that only time will be able to break down. Nevertheless, its progress will be faster than that of Christianity, because Christianity itself clears the way for it and serves as its basis and support. Christianity had to destroy prior beliefs. Spiritism only has to build up from there.
Okay, so first thing here, when Kardec asks, will Spiritism become a widespread belief? Let's not think about Spiritism as what we have here in Spiritism. Let's think about the concepts that Spiritism brings and makes more widespread. The concept of reincarnation, the concept of communication with the spirits, the concept of us being eternal beings. So the concept of reincarnation, 30% of Americans believe in reincarnation. The vast majority with having no idea how it works, right? Spiritism explains how it works, but you see the concept, 30% is more for sure than those that believed in the reincarnation at the time of Kardec. The communication with spirits, right? It's something that is more and more accepted here. It started in this country in 1848. The spiritualist movement was very strong in the end of the 19th century, and then it became a little bit diminished as science moved away from the research, because there was a lot of research, scientific research on mediumship and communication with the spirits in the beginning of the 20th century. Then science moved away from it. But you see, you just have to look at the movies, right? The concept of the survival of the soul, it's out there, right? Even if you go to zombies and the other things, right? Which is, in the end, is the survival of the soul in different forms. The communication between the two worlds, right? The mediumship, it's something that is also becoming more and more accepted. You see the TV series, right? That we have about, there is one that started last week, actually, I didn't see it, that she talks to the dead, I think, or she sees the dead or something like that. Did you see, Soraya?
Yes, I saw it. Her name is Rodriguez, I believe, in a comedian way, but it is there.
Yeah,
She goes around seeing spirits. The spirits come to her, and she's just developing it now. And she's a little far-fetched of what's going on, but it's interesting to see that. It is very interesting that they are now bringing out these shows to kind of open people mind that there is such a thing. So I think it's great. I think it's great. If you get to see it because it's like in it comedian way. But it's there. It shows you and what she goes through.
yeah,
She's a medium. She's a medium.
yeah. People at least get curious, right? And go
Right,
searching for it, right? So and today with the internet and with the accessibility to the information, it's much easier for people to find more information. So that's what spirits and Kardec are telling us here, right? That the concepts in Spiritism will become a widespread belief. Of course, Kardec thought at that time that things were going to go much faster. 160 years later, it's not that widespread, and it's not that widespread studied, but it's out there, right? More and more people accepting and becoming more comfortable with the ideas. And Kardec says here that ideas are only transformed over the course of time, never suddenly. Generations are needed. And even he compares with Christianity, we have to, if we think that from the time that Jesus came to the time that Christianity became accepted and no longer persecuted, was more than 300 years, right? And then another, I don't know how many years until it became predominant, let's say, right? So again, with all the problems and that it created, we're not going to get into there. But you know, what Spiritism brought to us has only 150 years, which is not much. So you can imagine that 150 years from now, the concepts, again, we're not talking about Spiritism becoming, you know, a global religion or whatever you want. You know, it shouldn't become a religion. But the concepts that Spiritism brings, it's going to become more and more well-known and more discussed and not discriminated against. Because again, there was a lot of discrimination against those that the mediums and the people that moved away from the traditional religions, right? There are still discrimination, but nowadays it's much easier for you to declare yourself without any religion and be a spiritual. And I was reading that the number here in the US is growing every census. It grows, almost doubles the number of people that declare themselves spiritual with no particular religious following. And these are the people that are open to the ideas that come from the different religions, right? From Buddhism, from Christianity, from other religions, and from spirituality, right? You have spiritualism in this country that is mostly focused on the communication with the spirits and not with the moral aspects that Spiritism brings also. But it's there, it's out there. There are many mediums out there, right? So again, sometimes people read those that are studying Spiritism read this question and say, well, 160 years have gone and I don't really see Spiritism growing that much. But it's, if you move away from Spiritism and the concepts and move to the concepts that Spiritism brings, you are going to see that it's growing, and it's growing a lot. Okay. Questions? Anything? Okay, we have 4 minutes. I think we can do one more, Philip.
799. How can Spiritism contribute to progress? By destroying materialism, which is one of the plagues of society, and making people understand where their true interest lies. When human beings no longer doubt the future life, they will understand more clearly that they can guarantee their future by the present. By destroying the prejudices of divisions, caste, and skin color, it teaches individuals about the great solidarity that will one day unite them as brothers and sisters.
Okay. How can Spiritism contribute? How can we contribute, right? With the understanding and the acceptance that we are eternal souls, the moment you accept that, then you start to reevaluating your priorities, right? You have to. Because if you think that we are going to live this life and that's it, you have different priorities than you think you are going to continue. If you are going to continue, and like Spiritism tells you, you're not going to change when you move to the other side. You are going to be exactly who you are with all your qualities and your imperfections. The only thing is, where are you going to find yourself when you move back to the spiritual world? You are going to reevaluate. And by reevaluating, you are going to think what's important, what really matters. The material life, the physical life we live is important for us to help us progress. But what type of progress? What is this in this progress that really matters to me in terms of an eternal spirit? So that's how Spiritism can contribute. The more we discuss this and the more people accept and evaluate it, the more it will become, society will become better, because the more we will behave in a different way, respecting others, like the Spirit says, destroying prejudices of divisions, castes, and skin colors, right? Again, 1857, the Spirits were telling us that already. And so the seeds are all there. How we are going to use that, that's an individual journey, and each one of us has to take whatever we can learn from that and apply it on our daily lives. That's what the Spirits are telling us. That's how we can contribute to progress. We Spiritists and we that accept the ideas that Spiritism brings to us. It's not you know, you don't have to become a Spiritist or anything like that, because it's more the ideas and the moral evolvement that we need to make, and for us to be useful to society. We don't need to follow any religion or any teachings. We just need to be better than we were yesterday and be useful to others, instead of being try to move away from selfish and pride, which, like Spiritism tells us, are the two plagues of society, right? Okay. Any final questions? Okay, we are out of time here. Okay, nothing. So, what do we have this weekend? First thing, Monday is President's Day, a holiday, so we'll be closed here, okay? We won't have our meeting here at SGNY. But this Saturday, we have a lecture by Yasko Arakawa, Spiritual Environment on Our Home. We spirits are immersed in a psychosphere formed by our constant emanations of thoughts and emotions, which in tune are affected as mediums by our interactions with the mental vibrations of other beings, incarnated and discarnated. So she's going to develop this and talk about what Jesus told us: be vigilant at all times and pray. So Saturday, 11 a.m. through the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube page, International Spiritist Council YouTube page also. A reminder that Divaldo Franco will be here on March 23rd in New York, right? At the UN headquarters. If you haven't bought your ticket yet, the tickets are still selling. You can go to, if you have received our email, there is a link to buy the ticket on the Tri-State Spiritist Federation website. There is also a link to buy the tickets. The series Psychology and Spirituality continues with the third class this tomorrow at 6 p.m. Understanding and Studying Psychology and Spirituality based on the works by Joana de Angelis. It's a weekly podcast series by the United States Spiritist Federation and TV Mansão do Caminho, which is Divaldo's TV there in Brazil. Okay, this Sunday, which is the third Sunday of the month, we are going to study the Medium's book at 11 a.m. Okay, the book club, yes, Danny, thank you. Chapter 7 of the book, Hail Christ, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. through Zoom, okay? Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Sure. Thank you, John. Thank you, Elmo. Thank you, Philip, for reading, and thank you, everyone, for participating. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for being together again as brothers and sisters for our study of the Spirit's book, the law of progress and civilization, the progress of societal legislation being our topics. A fully developed civilization is recognized by its moral development. Human laws will become more aligned with the divine laws. There will be resistance to this change, which is part of the progress, which is part of evolving and progressing. We are moving forward as we lessen the selfishness, the greed, and pride. As we transform our vices into virtues, we want this to become more in harmony with the natural laws. We invite this change to occur in the world. It requires step-by-step action. The concepts of reincarnation and mediumship and the survival of the soul will continue in its progress in the world and will become more acceptable and widespread in various societies. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits who are with us, providing the inspiration, the guidance, and helping us to have a better concept of and understanding of our teachings. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and may we share this with others who are in our world, in our path, our family members, loved ones, and those who are in need of more caring, respect, and kindness. We pray for inner peace, and we extend this to the world. The world is in need of peace as well. And for those who are suffering in the spiritual world and in the physical world at this time, may we send our prayers and extend our goodwill to them. We pray for our center, SGNY, and those Spiritist centers throughout the world. And may they grow and expand and to provide wonderful harmony in the world. And as we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we go forth and remind ourselves to be beacons of light, love, peace, and harmony. So be it.